Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Mumbai Angels Network Reboot Navigating the New Normal session. Before we begin, a request to all of you to mute your devices so that we can hear the speakers clearly and participate in the discussion better. We at MA Network have always believed in leading from the front and present a seven-part series discussing the key aspects of issues currently impacting the startup ecosystem and how we collectively can take steps to overcome them. The session for today is 60 minutes, and since this is the concluding session of the April edition of Reboot, the session is divided into 40 minutes of panel discussion and 20 minutes of Q&A. Please feel free to send in your questions to us during the chat. If you wish to address your questions to a particular panelist, do let us know, and we'll do our best to get it addressed. You can share your questions via chat at any point of time in the discussion. Our team will curate it and present it to our panelists. The session for today is on rewriting the new normal, where industry leaders will talk about the strategies for navigating the new normal that we are now faced with. Our panelists for today are Sushma Kaushik, partner, Aavishkaar Group. Sushma brings with her over 14 years of diverse experience in the field of early stage investing, small business incubation, and financial inclusion. At Aavishkaar, Sushma has worked to identify and manage and exit large number of companies and has worked closely with several inclusive business entrepreneurs. Sushma has completed a strategic leadership program at the prestigious Harvard Business School. She is an engineering graduate from RVCE Bangalore and has an MBA from Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. Our next panelist for today is Ajith Karimpana, founder for Furlenco. Ajith is the founder and CEO of Furlenco, India's fastest growing furniture and home living subscription company. He is a versatile entrepreneur with a great knack for spotting transformational business opportunities, a trait that has also led him to establish Furlenco. Under his leadership, the company has become India's first and only 100% technology-driven home living subscription platform. Apart from being a successful and inspirational business leader, Ajith is a voracious leader and has a penchant for languages. The next panelist is Keyur Bhatia, Chairman, TJUK Trade Networks. Cracking one of food industry's biggest conundrums, safe, hygienic distribution, Keyur is the industry's back-end boy. In the last 23 years, Mumbai-based TJUK has been able to build a vast distribution network, helping brands such as HUL, Maggi, Lipton, Pillsbury, Parle Agro, and Mother Dairy reach far-flung regions across the country. By bringing in global packaged food brands such as London Dairy and McCain to India, Keyur has also taken it upon himself to educate the market about food products and how to use them. The final panelist for today, Sruthi Kannan, heads Cisco's LaunchPad. Shruti works with deep tech companies for driving digital transformation, focusing on technology areas such as Internet of Things, collaboration, networking, and security. Through LaunchPad, she drives meaningful outcomes for startups in their scale-up journey by providing access to a wide gamut of resources, including joint go-to-market, tech integration, business mentorship, grants, and investor connect, and has worked closely with over 100 CXOs of deep tech startups and mentors across various organizations in a span of 3 years. Today's session will be moderated by Nandini Mansinghka, co-promoter and CEO, Mumbai Angels Network. Nandini has over 20 years of experience across investment banking, media, and education sectors. She has also founded DigiBooster, India's first data-driven influencer marketing platform. Nandini has held leadership positions in the investment banking research group at JP Morgan in India. Prior to joining JP Morgan, she was part of the corporate strategy and finance group at the Times of India group. I would like to take a minute to thank our panelists for their time and consideration, and also for giving us and our audience the opportunity to hear their insights. A final request to please keep your devices on mute and to share your questions via chat. Without further taking more time, I would like to dive into the session. Over to you, Nandini.
Thank you, Shivangi. Hi, Ajith, Shruti, Keyur. I don't see Sushma. Hi, all of you. Great to have all of you here. You know, we started MA Reboot about 4 weeks back. And the whole purpose is to say, all of us right now are in a place where this was something that just came and hit all of us from nowhere. And none of us, and I was talking some time back, none of us had ever imagined we'd see something like this in our lives. And I was talking to my parents, I was talking to my grandparents. Nobody has seen something like this. Yeah? Which means that we have two options, as human beings, as a society, as people who are running our own businesses, as startups. We either freeze and we just sit and we let fear overtake us, or we actually sit there and say, what next? How do we actually tackle it? What do we do when uh, you know this thing gets over? Is it really getting over? Is there a new normal over there? Now the good thing is that when we started this a month back, we were still not sure. We were still groping around and just trying to understand what's going on. Today, it's not that we have answers, but there's still some clarity. We've gone through this journey for a month, and there are companies that have pivoted within our portfolio. We see companies that have started doing really well, found newer business models. I can talk about how Mumbai Angels is handling it. This is in this time we've actually closed 5 deals in this month. So we are out there. We have said, how do you actually go virtual? So our first response to this is to say, how do you go virtual? So we've gone completely virtual in our investment process. We have actually very actively started looking at ourselves as a virtual conference company, a virtual academy. So how do you actually use this time to not just make your current processes really strong, but how is there a way for you to actually pivot and find newer business models? So what I'm going to do is that, since we have such a power-packed panel today, I'm just going to take 2 minutes from each one of you, where you could give your perspective on how you see the situation. And you could take a call on saying, do you want to talk about just the current lockdown, or the next 2 or 3 months, and then what do you see post that. So let's look at a little longer runway and say 12 to 18 months. How do you see things panning out? And let's keep the answer short so that we can then move on to the next question. So Ajith, do you want to take this question first?
Sure. Thanks, Nandini. Thanks for inviting me over. Really appreciate that. Just for the audience, as a background, so I run a company called Furlenco. We are into furniture subscription / rental, however you may call it. We've been around for some time. This is our 5th year of funded existence, with over 100,000 homes furnished over a period of 5 years. That's about the background. So to your specific question, Nandini, yes, you're right. This is something unprecedented. We've not seen this. I've not seen this. My parents have not seen it. So I completely agree with you on what you said. But when I say that, I also, what I'm hearing from everyone, whatever downfalls that they have seen in the past, one thing that comes out as an overarching theme is that mankind has never succumbed fully. No virus in the history of humankind has wiped out humans, because otherwise you and we would not be talking here. So I'm an optimist. This is bad. The situation is bad. We don't know. We have not seen the full end of it yet. But I see that we will get over it at some point of time. It is different from the past. It is not something, there's no playbook out there for us to take and then execute. That is for sure. But then, hey, I mean, we are humans. We are supposed to be intelligent. We will navigate around this. There are newer challenges, right? Newer boundaries redrawn. Families have suddenly become very important for us. People have become distant. Families hardly spend time each other. In the last 40 days or 35 days, never have I spent so much time with my kids ever, right? So these are things which have changed dramatically, and very specific bias things like, all of a sudden there are corners in the house which I've never seen. And maybe it's missing a piece of furniture. right? And I'm starting to think that, hey, if I'm missing it, there's somebody out there who's missing it, which means that when this lockdown gets over, the business might boom, right? So I'm an optimist. I'm in the optimist bucket. This is here to stay for some time. We may not have seen the full effect of it, but we're also seeing the green shoots here and there. I see that by probably next month we'll start seeing opening up at least. Furlenco right now is fully shut down, but luckily in our business model, it's a subscription-based model, so we do see revenues. We're holding up more than 90% of our revenue, so which is helping us from in terms of how we look at business itself. So immediate 3 months is a struggle, but then not as much as what other startups are facing. Luckily, touch wood, that's mainly because of the model. But 12 to 18 months is not going to be an easy thing. I don't see it's going to be a cakewalk for us. We may see some newer behaviors with the consumer, but there too, I'm an optimist. I believe that our business, subscription businesses, furniture subscription is only going to boom, not retract in some sense. How are they going to access this? What are they going to ask? What are the questions that they're going to ask? That might change. But hey, I mean, that's what businesses are supposed to be doing. We need to keep innovating. If you don't innovate, you're not going to be good. COVID or not, you have to continue innovating. So COVID is another form of innovation for business. So I'm an optimist, Nandini. So I would stop with that.
Super. Sushma, how do you see the investment environment? What are you seeing now? What are you seeing in the next 12 to 18 months?
Sure. So, COVID did come as a huge shock to the entire investor community. And for, a few days when COVID actually hit India, till the time it didn't come to India, everyone thought it's somebody else's problem. Yeah. And that problem is not going to come home, and that problem is not going to affect us. So we all were living in this bubble that, it's not going to impact us. But, it hit hard when it was closer home. And when actually the lockdown was announced was when people actually sat up and took notice that, oh, okay, so it's going to affect all of us. And so there was a little bit of panic initially, and people were scampering around. The first thing obviously was to take stock of all the financial situations of all our companies, because we also as Aavishkaar invest in very early stage companies, supporting them in their early years. And so we have almost 60 companies in our portfolio across our various funds. The first thing we did was, take stock of what is the liquidity position, what is the runway they have, how long will they survive, and, one is surviving. And again, we didn't even know for how long a lockdown like this is going to last, right? I mean, are we supposed to make a 3-month assumption, 6-month assumption, 12-month assumption? We didn't even know where to begin, right? So we were pretty much shooting darts in the dark. And so finally now I think the dust has settled down. We now know facts a little better. So we are mentally prepared. There's a lot more data available to say, okay, there are green zones, red zones and stuff like that. So we are better prepared. But so saying, clearly there is no playbook, as I also mentioned, right? And there's no formula or a ready solution saying you do this and this is going to be the outcome. And different sectors are going to be impacted differently. So, for investors, the portfolio allocation to see weightages across portfolios, which companies are in, say, consumer, financial services, B2B, all of those. And each one is impacted very differently and for different periods of time. So preparing for all that is how we started off. But first thing, across the board, we did mention that please don't take hasty decisions of just cutting jobs, because that's the one lever that the management believes they have the easiest available. So that was the first recommendation we gave, and then we said, let's first take stock. You start taking drastic measures. So that has helped us for now.
Sruthi, Sruthi, hi.
Hi, Nandini.
Hi. So what's your
Sure. So I run Cisco LaunchPad. Cisco LaunchPad is the corporate accelerator of Cisco, where we work with deep tech startups. We've been working since 2016 with startups across the spectrum. For Cisco, I think this is more of business as usual because our focus has been powering people, has been enabling connectivity, has been enabling remote connectivity. So I think so far our primary focus has been just us. Now the focus just spread to the bigger world, the bigger ecosystem around us. So we are powering organizations around us as well to start adopting, which is the normal for us, to the new normal, which is, remote connectivity and living in this digital world. So that way, from a Cisco's perspective, I think we've been doing our best to deploy our technologies. And of course, the best of the technologies around the globe are in motion as well to make sure that people are able to connect, stay in touch, and ensure business continuity. From a launchpad perspective, we've been continuously working with these startups, and I echo Sushma's and Ajith's sentiments as well. The main focus is on the employees, the teams, their safety. So these are all of paramount concern for all of us as well. So we've been adopting several of these measures while building their foundation. So for us, I think it's a time to sit, reflect on what has been done so far, how we can probably shift course, change gears to the new normal. So if you look at it, if you are looking at a phase where you want to overtake or get ready for the next phase of business, and if you're, of course, a manual car driver, it's all about changing the gears to the lower gear, and only then you overtake on a highway, right? So even if you look at an F1 racing, it's all about hitting the brake so that you get around the curve and accelerate and speed up faster. So it's all about hitting the brake at the right moment. And I think now has been the time that we are all on a forced brake mode. And I definitely don't think that it is bad for anyone. It's a mode of reflection that we are all forced to take to be prepared for the new future. We are at an inflection point to be able to prepare for the new future. Even if you look at it, neither the Zooms or the WhatsApp or the WebExes of the world, we never had any of these technologies. You just look at 10 years back or 20 years back. And now the fact that we are able to communicate today is the result of somebody's vision or even a pain. So now that we are all facing this pain, I think we are only giving birth to newer and newer ideas and newer technologies. And these will become part of what will be the driving force of the newer century and the newer generations to come. So I think, as Ajith was mentioning, we're all super optimistic. We're all, from a corporate standpoint, we're all aligned to support these startups in whatever manner possible from our end, and ready to give it all.
Thank you. Keyur, what's your, what are you seeing, happening, say, in the last 1 month, and how do you see this thing panning out?
So, hi Nandini, and hello to everybody on the panel and people who are here attending this conference. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak on this. So, to give you a little background, so I run a distribution company, FMCG food products mainly, and we are a pan-India distribution company. We deal with retailers, general trade, modern trade, and HoReCa customers, that is hotels, restaurants, and caterers. So let me, to do better service to the cause today of being here on the panel, let me speak from the prism of the food business. I think I would be able to opine much better. As everybody has spoken so much about, what is happening already, this is a new normal. Nobody expected this to happen. And this has hit every industry. There is nobody who is left unscathed, individuals or industries. So as I see things panning out in the last, ever since 20th of March, when that Janta curfew happened, things have slowly started to settled in, and people are now understanding what's going to happen. They have a better vision and perspective, and more sense to the madness or to the unknown. Right, when you talk of red, orange, and green zones, and the government's plans to open slowly in a staged fashion, all of these areas. What we did see earlier was that there was a lot of confusion into what was open and what was not, what is essential, what is not, and there was lack of coordination between the various departments of the government, and hence the way this was implemented was very confusing in the early days. But I must congratulate the government on being extremely proactive. I've been in interactions with a lot of NGOs, a lot of departments within the government, a lot of task forces. I can tell you that they are working 24/7 to help the cause of the common man, to help the cause of the industry. And that is great news. Typically, we have this dialogue in India that the government does not do much. But at this point of time, I see a lot of proactivity. From the industry standpoint, I think that, this is a watershed moment, undeniably. As my colleague Ankur would say it, what happened to Paytm at the time of demonetization is what is happening to the consumption trends, and in favor of, D2C, in favor of e-commerce companies, in favor of logistics companies or aggregators. Well, whatever's happened is not great, but strictly from a business point of view, I think there are so many opportunities which are coming up, new opportunities, and so many changes of trends. So I think this is a great time to reflect, and for existing companies to actually hone their product offering, their teams, upgrade. Good time to actually look at technology and better use and utilization of that. So I see a lot of proactive people getting into that zone at this point of time. There are a lot of training, a lot of webinars which are going on, and I think it's all for good.
Okay. Yep, good. So Ajith, I just wanted to start looking at these questions in a little more depth. So you mentioned that your company is right now shut. So you're not really, doing newer business, and you're not sending new furniture to people's homes. But
Correct.
In that scenario, how are you keeping in touch with your customer? That's one question. And secondly, what is the consumer behavior that you're seeing? How are people responding to you? Is there a shift that you're already noticing, or is it too early to make a comment on it?
So yes, you're right. So we are fully shut down right now, which basically means that there are no deliveries of furniture, and neither there are pickups. If people are returning back their furniture, even that is not happening, mainly because there are no trucks flying at this point of time. As a subscription company, we communicate through our app, through our website, and of course through emails with our customers. We do offer a lot of services to our customers in terms of, swapping their furniture, cleaning, and all those stuff, which, by the way, again, is stopped right now because we can't get into their homes at this point of time. So times are a little bit tough. What we would normally do as a subscription company, we're not able to do right now. But luckily, customers do understand. They know where things are, so they're not being. They are being kind, and they do understand. So no problems on that front. So typically, this is the time that you would see a lot of relocation happening in the market, because schools are supposed to have been shut any which way, summer vacations and stuff like that. So you would see a lot of people moving from one city to another city. So you would have seen a lot of people giving back their furniture. We would have seen a lot of people taking furniture as well. And generally, because the market is becoming bigger for us, we see a lot more deliveries happening. So that, of course, again, it is shut at this point of time. From a behavior perspective, what we've noticed is that people who are even thinking of giving back the furniture post-lockdown, those requests have come down. So people have now decided to stay put and not make any changes to their lives. There are many different things, at least from a furniture perspective. They could have moved to a different city, or they could have decided to buy furniture. It seems like, and these are like 40 to 50% of our customers. So we would typically get, let's say, out of 100% of requests, 50 to 60% would be relocation, and 20 to 30% would be about buying new furniture. That has slashed by like 50%. People, even though they're coming and saying, the moment lockdown is over, can you pick up my furniture? That request has come down by 50%. So it's a little bit early to conclude that it's permanent, but I do see a trend of people staying put, procrastinating that decision. Maybe it is about job change, maybe it is about the next thing in their life, maybe it is about a permanent thing, about an asset like furniture. All of those decisions have been put away, and we, being a subscription company, more utilitarian that way, more closer to, let's say, a Netflix and internet than being discretionary. We're seeing that our kind of a business is going to flourish post the lockdown. So lockdown per se, like everybody else, it's a shutdown. Revenue staying where it is, what it was when it was locked down. But behavioral wise, I think people are going to stay put. I also believe that more people are going to procrastinate their decision of at least buying furniture, if not anything else, and they may still go with subscription as a model. So yeah, that's my observation. That's one of them.
Keyur, the same question to you, but in a slightly different perspective. You mentioned essentials and non-essentials. So through your, distribution channels, you must be seeing a lot of movement of essentials. So, what has been branded as essentials and moving. Is there a pent-up demand of non-essential goods and services that you think the minute the government opens up, there's going to be like a floodgate of people who will start buying mobile phones and fridge and clothes online, or do you think that has got paused for some time? Even, gourmet food, for example, I'm sure you see the entire range of food being sent out. Keyur?
Sorry, I just lost the connection, bad connectivity. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, okay. So I was saying that, the same question about consumer behavior that Ajith answered. I wanted your perspective on, you are seeing this thing on the front lines with, the whole distinction between essential and non-essential goods. And right now, of course, there is a lockdown, and the government has mandated that only something that is essential will go out. The minute that thing is changed, do you see a floodgate opening of people buying non-essential stuff, like mobile phones and refrigerators and clothes and everything? Is that going to be a boom? Yeah, okay.
Absolutely, I do. So the government is also planning to start some non-essentials. I believe hardware shops have opened now. Mobile phones has now become a necessity. It's nearly an essential. So yes, that is going to happen because the demand has been suppressed for a very long time, and what was non-essential for a couple of weeks becomes very essential when you're talking of more number of weeks. So yes, that is going to happen.
But isn't that correlated to people procrastinating their buying decisions because there might be, cash is now suddenly becoming a challenge. Not everybody is sure that they'll have the same amount of money over the next 18 months. So
yes, so some items will see a depression. I see that, maybe a luxury would be something which is going to be last on the list. But necessity items like I said, a mobile phone charger, right? Your screen is broken. What are you going to do about it? So many other things. And let's look at this. So I don't want to look at the negative aspects of all of this. Everybody's suffering it. Everybody's living that. Let's look at what's actually not happening. If people are not stepping out, their cost of living has gone down actually. Okay, a lot of people have got benefits from their landlords or on their lease agreements, and many companies are looking at, normalizing their salaries and bringing back their staff. They're working in ingenious ways of surviving the storm. And things are going to be back to normal for a lot of people. Sure, it's going to be challenging for some. There is going to be reduction in consumption, no doubt about it, because there is going to be some amount of unemployment rate which is going to go up. Also, some industries will suffer because of the migration of labor, because they're very dependent on that. But all said and done, I would like to optimistically believe that things are going to come back to normal in terms of consumption sooner rather than later. India also happens to be one of the choicest of destinations for investments, and we're hearing news about 300 contracts being signed of factories coming into India and businesses opening in India. It's a great investment destination. So I think a lot of international tourism which was happening is now going to be all localized. People are going to travel domestically. That is going to take up consumption. People spend a lot of money. Indians are supposed to be the biggest spenders in the international tourism spots. So I feel that, yes, there will be a small lull, but eventually I see after post all of this settling down, huge upside. There is going to be boom time back again.
Okay, yeah. Sushma, from your portfolio perspective, that you're seeing, what are the consumer trends you're picking up? Which industries do you think will bounce back faster? Are you being able to map some very specific trends that you see across your portfolio? Which one do you think is going to take a longer time to come back?
Sure. Nandini, we're seeing some real clear trends that are emerging now, and now that the dust has settled down, right? So one, we had to make a bifurcation of what is essential and what is non-essential services. And clearly all those that come under the essential services, are kind of COVID proof. They continue to see sustained demand. Though, the lockdown and the implementation of the lockdown created some bottlenecks in the implementation of things. But, they continue to be robust business. The non-essential services, of course, by nature of them being defined as non-essential, have a disadvantage. Now, irrespective of essential or non-essential, when we are looking at businesses now going forward, the one filter which was not available before is a business COVID proof. And that's kind of becoming a new investment lingo, because many investors are now asking, are you COVID proof? Because people are now believing that pandemics like this could become a trend or something that will repeat. It's a recurring event every few years. And so they want to ensure that businesses will be able to sustain even in spite of this kind of a lockdown environment. So basically, social distancing is going to be the new norm. And because of social distancing, how can businesses adapt and ensure that they continue as business as usual, right? So that's the new trend that we're witnessing. The other thing, what we see is a lot of businesses are trying to become tech enabled. So before COVID, no matter how much you would drive down to company promoters, and tell them that, boss, please automate things and go digital, there was a lot of resistance. But now people are waking up to the new reality of seeing how best to automate things. Work from home might become, again, the new normal. So people are actually trying to figure out what teams are teams that can actually sit back and work from home. They're not critical enough to actually come to an office. And so people are actually already thinking of steps of, okay, then does that require lesser real estate space? Office rents can be reduced. So how do I adapt to something like, remote call centers, chat bots, things that will cut down on FaceTime with people, and even automation of general business services. All of those are trends that we are seeing both at the back end as well as the front end. And in terms of consumer trends, we do believe that, the next 6 months is going to be a little tight, because there's a little bit of concern in the economy of, whether there's going to be jobs, whether people's wages will remain at the same levels, how long will these things last. So people will be a little conservative in their spends. Of course, essential spends, I don't think people will cut down on, but non-essential spends, people might be a little averse immediately. However, when you read Chinese articles, you see that recently Hermes, one of the luxury brands, saw the largest sales on day one of opening, right? I mean, one would beg to understand why would something like that happen after such a long lockdown. But I guess different people would react differently. But in a country like ours, where largely, we have mostly lower middle class driving the economy, there would be some concerns on spending. And so that's how we are calibrating things.
Super. So Shruti, that brings all of us to you, you mentioned at the beginning where you said you are there to make companies tech enabled. What are you seeing in terms of specifics on how can, even if a company earlier was not using technology, give us examples of how you have looked at companies that have now suddenly started adapting technology. Talk to us about, this whole work from home. What are the things that startups, who do not have budgets and who are trying to find ways to adapt technology and cut costs? What are your pointers to them? What all can they use? How can everybody become tech enabled?
So, just to summarize some thoughts leading to this discussion, whatever Sushma, Ajith, and Keyur put it here, right? So, I would also like to quote Ernst Young report on consumer trends, which says that the spending patterns are going to be fourfold. One is cut deep. The second one is stay calm and carry on. The third one is save and stockpile. And fourth one is hibernate and spend. So I think that's how the economies of the world are going to behave. So now what do we do here? The way we would approach it from a startup perspective, from a corporate perspective, is threefold. Focus on the basics and strengthen the foundation, because it all boils down to what is most important to you, your employees, your customers. So it's very important to understand what is the crux, what is the core of the business. The second most important thing is to connect the right dots. So when I say connect the right dots, it could mean dots of different kinds. It could mean dots of the right technologies. It could mean people. It could mean investors, customers, partners that we want to be having as strong stakeholders during and post the lockdown. In fact, Nandini, as you mentioned, you had funded 5 big deals during this lockdown situation. I think this is a great time. We are seeing the same trends too with a lot of our startups that are in the same phase. One of our startups raised a Series B round. Another startup got acquired. One of Cisco's LaunchPad startup got acquired. There was another startup which acquired another startup. So the trends are amazing. This is in fact the right time to connect the dots on all fronts. The third one, and again, I resonate with what Sushma said, is the preparedness for digital transformation. This has been the buzzword from Cisco for a very long time, but if you see the ones that are surviving this curve, it's like the Darwin's theory, right? The ones that cut this curve are the ones that are most adaptive and they adapt to digital transformation. So I think that's very key. Digital transformation is going to be the buzzword that is going to make sure the people, the businesses post a lockdown survive appropriately. So how are we doing that? I think at the moment it's all going virtual, which means that people from the customer end are also being open to a lot of these stuff. So let me just give you an example. Take our local grocers like Spencer's Retail, for example, or even a more or Shoppers Stop kind of stuff, which sells our grocery for day-to-day use. So far, none of us had this huge need to install their app or interact with them digitally or such. All we would do is just walk into their store, pick up whatever things we want, and walk outside. Now, is the situation conducive for all of that? Not at all, right? And we wouldn't even think of that happening in the next couple of months. So, with technology coming into play here, WhatsApp is becoming key. So they put what is more in the hands of everybody, which is now WhatsApp. So they partnered with one of our startups and they put this WhatsApp bot into action. So right now, if you want to shop, you just add Spencer's Retail WhatsApp into your account, and you get a bot answering, hey, what grocery do you want? And you just place the order on WhatsApp and you get it delivered, or you find the nearest Spencer's Retail which is in your vicinity. So what we thought, sorry, what we thought would never, sorry.
No.
Yeah, so what we thought would be like the default way of life is getting totally transformed in here by technology.
Okay. So I understand that, now we would want to move to Q&A. And Shivangi, how do you want to run this?
Sure. So this time we do have a few questions directed towards specific panelists.
Yeah.
So maybe I can cover that and then we can look at some of the general questions. Would
Yes,
that
and
work?
also I would request all panelists to keep their answers really short so that we can cover, I see a lot of questions are coming.
Sure.
So let's try and answer
So
as many as
continuing
we
with
can.
Shruti's response, actually this question, Keyur, is directed at you. There's a lot of concern on how modern trade would adapt to this current scenario. What would be the outlook for them and also the future of Kirana stores? So these are the two questions that have come in relation to grocery shopping in India.
Keyur, we can't hear you.
Let me answer this question with a different perspective, if I may. So firstly, direct to consumer is going to be an extremely large business, what Shruti just pointed out. And most of the modern trade is working on this. And a lot of innovative businesses and a lot of innovative ideas have come during this time. And D2C is going to be the next big channel. Modern trade is right now, at this point of time, privileged to have a lot of business. Most of their stores are doing very well at this point of time because of the situation, because of the lockdown. Going forward, also I think this trend is going to continue. Things are going to look up on them, for them, and direct to consumer initiatives have been initiated by each one of these guys. So that is what is going to happen. So e-commerce is becoming a mainstay, and in times to come, it's going to be more and more important. See, trends have changed completely. And Kirana stores have actually proved out to be the angels at this point of time. Those are the guys who actually help the people, and they are getting, they've done actually a comeback during this time. And but very quickly they will have to adapt because the consumption trends are changing. People are getting used to more and more sitting at their home and ordering as per their convenience and not standing in long queues at the modern trade outlets or waiting at the Kirana store. So yeah, that is the change which I see.
Thank you, Keyur. Nandini, Sushma, this question is actually for both of you. What are the funding trends that you are seeing? Do you see a shift towards more funding towards non-discretionary businesses that are open in this current scenario, like cloud kitchens, delivery platforms? And what about the funding of non-discretionary businesses? Where do such companies go from here? Because most funds are right now looking at protecting their own portfolio, more focused on trying to first get that in order and then look at other companies. So is there really a sequence in place in terms of first focusing on your own portfolio, then looking at companies which are in the non-discretionary space, and then finally into the discretionary space? Is there some kind of trend like
Sushma,
that?
why don't you take this first?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. Most funds today are trying to focus on their own portfolio companies because they just have to set their home in order first. But so saying, there are lots of funds with a lot of dry powder. And actually, it's a very good time for them to actually scout for good quality deals. If they have very strong investment theses in some sectors, this is a great time for them to go ahead and make those investments. I think most investors make an investment taking a 5 to 8 year call, right? I mean, that's the kind of horizon people have when, at least in the later stage investments, whether you're talking of a Series A or a Series B round, they have at least a 5 to 8 year kind of time frame when they make an investment. So, a kind of a pandemic break right now is just a blip in the overall scheme of things. So if an investor is going to turn around and say that, I'm not going to take a call on discretionary or non-discretionary investments, then that's sad, because then that's a very short-term approach of investing. So I do believe that most investors have a slightly longer-term approach, and maybe they'll delay an investment decision, but it's not like they're going to run away from it. And yes, the order will be first set your home in order, then start looking at opportunities which are very obvious, which are COVID proof, and then move to the other hypothesis that you might have.
Yeah, so for us at Mumbai Angels, I'm sure all of you would have seen, we don't see there to be a slowdown. We are because we are almost always the first institutional investors that come in. We are seeing investor interest from across the spectrum, and I think what is happening is that the questions that the investors are asking are changing. The investment decision is not. So, for example, people do want to know what is going to be your runway. So, earlier we were funding companies that, could survive with 6 months with our money. Today, people will say that, listen, if you're raising money, can you last for 18 months or not? That's a fun question. Secondly, this whole business of COVID proof. What are you going to do in case something like this hits you? Or even now, how are you going to handle? And we do see a discussion around valuations changing. So this is a market where you might need to actually take little tougher valuations for your company, and you should be ready for it, because right now the money that is coming into your bank account is the only one that is real. Everything else is a discussion. So I don't see a slowdown. In fact, for us, we are actually on a run, and as our network of individual investors, people are willing to take bets on strong companies, strong founders. And like Sushma is saying, the perspective is not saying, oh, what's going to happen in the next 3 months. Perspective is saying, is this a company that can actually grow? Shivangi?
Yeah. So the next question is for Ajith. Ajith, the question that has come up is more in terms of, like you rightly pointed out, we may see a shift in consumer trends in terms of the demand. You're already seeing that where people are not really looking at returning their furniture as quickly as they would. Either they're staying put or they fear the whole supply chain right now, where they don't want something new coming into their house. But are you parallelly seeing a shift in interest in, say, work from home furniture and things like when Shruti had pointed out that the trends are changing and more people will be working from home going forward? Are you seeing that kind of shift in demand already? Have there been any inquiries in that direction?
Yeah, so surprisingly, in March, we saw like a 300% jump in our work from home side of the business. So we do have study tables and chairs and these kind of stuff which we rent out. So we saw a 300% spike in that 20-21 days of non-lockdown period. which basically meant that people had started working from home. So yes, there is a immediate trend for people starting to work from home. That's obvious because we're all there at home right now. What I'm not fully certain is this trend forever. I am hearing a lot of nonsense in the market about working from home, etc. But I'm also on the balancing side. If things get better, are we going to be people who are going to be socially distancing forever? That I'm not very sure about. I am also believing that things will come back to normal over a period of time. So yes, working from home could be the norm for the next 6 months, maybe even 12 months. But I'm not sure whether that's the norm for 18 months and 24 months. Now, if you bring it down to our business itself, we're a subscription business, we're a rental business. So if we create an asset, it goes into people's house, then it comes back, and then it goes into the next person's house, right? So if we swing on the trend of work from home and create a lot of assets in that front, tomorrow, let's say 1 year down the line, when all these assets come back, when people no longer are working from home, we could end up with a lot of dead inventory. So we are treading with caution. We are not, while I'm optimistic about getting sales through that particular front, we're not putting all our eggs into one such basket and saying that, let's put all the money in working from home. It works for retailers, perfect. We're not a retailer. We give it out for rentals. So somebody who's trying to sell furniture may want to shift their strategy to selling more of work from home kind of solutions. But that may not necessarily be Furlenco's strategy. We will continue to give a work from home solution, but we're not going to put all our eggs into one basket. So I'm not sure if that answered the question.
That actually does answer it. Shruti, the next question is for you. There has been a lot of noise around TCS's announcement that they would slowly move to the whole work from home culture. Do you think that this would impact the entire IT sector as a whole? How does it affect your business, your company's plans? And do you actually see this as a global trend with one of the largest global majors actually making this shift?
Yeah, personally from Cisco's end, I think the whole of our workforce is currently working from home. So if we can do that, most others can do that as well. But I think I augment Ajith's point. If there are physical assets, then of course you do have the issues of dealing with it. But I would say, I think the best bet at this point of time to see what is your ratio of physical versus virtual assets, and how much of more virtual assets can we create at this point of time. So, that would really help us to tide over from this crisis currently, and may also help us beat this down the line. So when I say virtual assets, for example, an organization like Ajith's could actually focus on creating much more solid platform on the virtual side right now, while being prepared for the next phase that would come in when the lockdown opens. Maybe for a couple of days they are able to go and make the solid platform robust and solid to be able to cater to so many demands coming up. So I'll just give a small example from my own experience. So I used to work on these mobile technologies, 2G, 3G, and all of those. So if you were following some of these, 2G came in, there was a lull. Then 3G came in, there was a lull period. Then 4G came in. So it's all like a sinusoidal wave. So when 4G came, it wasn't the end of the world. People who were not prepared for it, they just died off. But people who were awaiting the next wave, they came back and they actually strengthened their foundations. They made sure that they were getting prepared. They were getting visionary ideas being implemented. They were innovating. That is very important, to innovate and think far and beyond and get ready for the future.
Thanks, Shruti. That was really helpful. Nandini, there are a couple of points which have been there across panels, and I would request this panel to actually take time and address those. One is this whole question around managing your costs and managing your workforce, where I think whatever perspective we get is not enough because there's always scope for more since the businesses are so different in nature. And the second question that is actually associated with that is what is the marketing strategy that companies should adopt? Whether how do they remain visible in front of their consumers, even though currently they may not have a product to sell. So in terms of crisis sensitive marketing, what is good to talk about, what is not good to talk about. So these are the 2 points that I would like the panel to touch upon.
Super. I think let's look at the cost bit, and then let's go around the table on that quickly. So, the 2 questions that we are getting are layoffs, salary cuts, between those two. How do you manage that? Is there a third way possible? And the second is, how do you look at costs which are not people related? What do you do about it? So, Sushma, since you look at it from a portfolio approach and you would have seen it across so many companies, what are the key messages you are getting in terms of layoffs, salary cuts, managing the workforce? Yeah.
So a couple of things that we are seeing. The way the managements are looking at it, they have broken it up as obviously employee costs and external vendor costs. And many of them realized that there was a lot of cushion that they had built on external vendor costs. So whatever they could defer or delay, that is the first cost that they are trying to curtail or reduce, because that doesn't impact the immediate employee base or the impact on employees. Post doing that, if there is a need for further cut in costs, they have again looked at employee costs as fixed and variable. Obviously, most of them have deferred any incentive payouts, bonus payouts, increments for the next year. And people have accepted that very happily because there has been no job cuts in the companies that I'm talking about. In spite of that, if there is still, a little hardship and there is limited runway, that's when the top management has stepped in taking pay cuts. With a clear mention that, if this stress lasts a certain period, beyond a certain period, then that kind of a pay cut would flow through for, mid-level staff as well. So that kind of transparency in communication, people know what to expect. People are not thinking that, oh, will I lose my job? There is no uncertainty in the way the management is, communicating with the staff. So that is creating a little better environment. It is not creating a very toxic environment for people to work in, because as it is, we've seen that the mental health issues of people working from home is on a rise. And there's a lot of anxiety among, especially the junior staff are extremely anxious because they believe they'll be the first ones to be axed. So, when these kind of things are put in motion, where the senior management is constantly interacting with teams across the board, across functions, that makes it a little safer place for people to work in. That's what we are seeing across our company.
So, I think we're about 2 minutes away in terms of our scheduled time, but Shivangi, maybe what we could do is we could extend it for about 5 more minutes.
Yes. Okay.
And then let's just take this question with everybody, and then let's just try and wrap this up faster. So Ajith, what's your view? What are you seeing?
Sure, on the cost front, right? A little bit nuanced. That's what I would answer that. So I don't think so there's a one size fit all kind of a solution out there. Like we said about the whole COVID thing, there's no playbook out there, and there's no playbook for cost cutting as well. What we know is that you need to conserve cash. I think that's what I would focus on. So conserving cash doesn't naturally mean cutting cost. It also means the subset of conserving cash could be cutting cost, but it doesn't obviously start with cutting costs itself, right? Now, but then if you go specifically into cutting costs, we at Furlenco, we don't believe that human capital is the first thing that you want to go and touch. The very people who are responsible for getting it to where it is and who are responsible for getting further growth in the company, they can't be your first port of call when it comes to cutting costs. So that's the philosophy that we go with. Second, for substantiate that point, is that look, if we are a cash flow positive company, and one of the ways we have gotten cash flow positive is not to be flabby, not to have too many people, unnecessary people that you can actually think of cutting later. So we actually don't have. We are always under resourced. So there's not much to cut from that front as well. So does that mean that you will never cut costs? There's no salary cut, nothing like that? No, I'm not saying that. But the playbook probably would be, you first look at your operations. If you're an operational company, you first look at your operations and see where you can start bringing in efficiency. There's a ton of efficiencies that you can bring in there, right? You look at your marketing cost as well. So during lockdown, post-lockdown, it varies. During lockdown, if you're shut down, your operations are shut, you can't do deliveries. Why would you market yourself? So don't market yourself right now. So you conserve cash from that point of view. And even when you come back post-lockdown, I don't think so there is going to be any company which is going to go back to 100% revenue as it was getting before lockdown. It's going to be a gradual bringing up of revenue. So if it is gradual bringing up of revenue, why would you spend like as you were spending before, like when you were spending in February? So you go back to the drawing board and look at what were your spends in February, and then predict what is possibly going to be the revenue, and build out different scenarios out there. Are you going to be, for sure, you're not going to get to 100%. Are you going to be 75% there? Are you going to be 50% there? Are you going to be 25% there, right? And based on those scenarios, you're going to at least start with your variable costs and saying that, you know what, there's no point having 100% of your costs or 50% of your costs or 25%. So I would start with a variable cost first. And if that is not working out, many of these companies don't have revenue. So what are you going to do? So there, Nandini, it's a function of what is the bank balance that you have, what is the revenue that you're bringing in, map out those two things, and to the age-old question of how long is your runway, and then figure out that how much do you want to cut on the fixed cost, and then finally you figure out how much do you want to cut on the salaries and the human capital front. So I'm of the camp that you don't touch human capital till the last. I'm not saying that you should never touch it. If you don't have any revenue, if you don't have any money in the bank, what do? You can't do anything about it. It is what it is, right? But certainly you'll touch that probably last. Of course, you don't want to carry all the baggages that you have, the ones who are underperforming, the ones who should have been doing their thing. I mean, that's normal, whether COVID or not. They should always be pulled up. That's not what I'm saying. But people who are working hard, people who are bringing in contribution out there, they are the ones whom you need to get in the other efficiencies in your company. So if you start pulling the carpet under them right now, how are you going to function? How are you going to get your revenue in the future, right? So that's the way I would attack. So bank balance and your projection of revenue, followed by cutting cost of the variable front, which is an easy thing, followed by all the fixed costs. Go back to your landlords, go back to your warehouse guys if you have warehouses, go back to your office fronts, ask for a discount there. Say that, look, you're in trouble. You want more runway, right? Do you want us to be out of business in the next 6 months, or do you want us to continue paying you 80% of your rent for the next 12 months? So start negotiating on that front. So bring down all of those fixed costs. And finally, if you're done with all of this and you're still running out of money, and that is when I would think that you will start touching your human capital. And even in the human capital, it starts from the CEO itself, right? So you'll start cutting from your own, and then you'll start going down and see that the last person in the organization is somebody who's leaving hand to mouth. So that's not the person you would cut. So even there is a waterfall kind of a mechanism that you need to follow. So it's not a one size fits all, but you can go through a strategy of how you look at bringing down the costs.
Super. So I think we've run out of time, unfortunately. So Keyur, you wanted to make a comment? Yeah.
Yes, I would recommend to everybody that, think of variabilizing your fixed costs. Again, from the food business perspective, we build a lot of businesses, our businesses with monopolized supply chains, right? You have a fixed manufacturing facility, you have a fixed distribution facility, you have a fixed sales team, etc. Either with strategic tie-ups or working with aggregators. That's what we've done for a lot of companies that we represent who are startups and really don't have the cash to go forward right now. So we are helping them consolidate their resources and helping them aggregate. It's like one sales guy, it's one truck carrying multiple brands. So at this point of time, probably accommodating with your competitors and actually using a common facility and common facilities at all angles would be a very handy tool to cut costs.
Shivangi, I think we've actually run out of time. So
I'll just take a minute to close the session. Thank you all panelists, Ajith, Sushma, Keyur, Sruthi, and Nandini for this discussion, and for our members, participants, and the team who has been part of this series throughout. I would also like to take this opportunity to announce MA Reboot Edition 2, an industry-specific series of talks about key challenges and opportunities faced by different sectors in the new normal, which is launching on 5th May. The details will be out soon. I hope to see you all there. Thank you once again for joining us. Have a good day.
thank you.